To the program, let's get some more now on the political reaction to the possibility of protests around October 7 and the other issues out of the Middle East and the reaction to it. I spoke to the manager of opposition business, Paul Fletcher. I started by asking him what the problem is with the government calling for a ceasefire now in the conflict in the Middle East.
Let's be clear, Israel has been attacked. The appalling attack of 7 October last year. We know that Iran has been behind this, both Hamas and Hezbollah, and Israel is exercising its right to self-defence. We should be supporting Israel. The impacts of this are very significant. Israel is a multi-party democracy. It's a long-standing ally and security partner of Australia, and can I say, as somebody who represents the federal electorate with the second largest Jewish community in New South Wales, I strongly support Israel's right of self-defence, and the wishy-washiness and mixed messages coming from the Prime Minister and this government are very disappointing.
Penny Wong has said today that, and reiterated, the government's support for Israel to defend itself in the face of that Iranian bombardment, but they are saying and reiterating that call for a ceasefire on the Lebanon-Israel border. Do you see the difference between the two?
Israel has a right to self-defence, and it is dealing with murderous terrorist organisations that are 100% committed to destroying Israel. And in those circumstances, what Israel is doing, in my view, is entirely justified, and the actions that have been taken in relation to, for example, eliminating the long-standing boss of Hezbollah, the Iranian-backed organisation, which has done enormous damage to Lebanon and to the lives of so many people in Lebanon, as well as the threat it presents to Israel. What's happening here? I'm sorry, go on.
I know you have many Maronite Christian constituents as well from Lebanon. What's the feedback you're getting from the Christian cohort in relation to efforts to dismantle that terrorist group?
Well, what people point out to me is that Hezbollah has done great damage to life in Lebanon. And Lebanon, of course, Beirut for many years was known as the Paris of the Middle East. Lebanon is a country with very important traditions, but unfortunately Hezbollah in many ways controls now what happens in Lebanon. It's backed by Iran, and that is very much to the detriment of the great majority of people in Lebanon. So these violent terrorist organisations like Hamas and Hezbollah present an existential threat. What Israel is doing is not only in the interest of Israel, but I'd suggest in the interests of stability in the Middle East.
How concerned are you about the prospect of rallies, protests, even if they go ahead illegally on October 7, marking a pro-Palestinian message on that day of all days?
I think it's appalling that on a day that will come a year after an attack which saw 1,200 men, women and children killed in Israel, hundreds of others dragged off to be held as hostages in Gaza, some of them sadly having been killed since then, others still presumably being held hostage. It is appalling that on that day of all days there would be activist organisations holding what in essence are celebrations of death and murder and terrorism. And
do you welcome the criticism of that by Penny Wong, the Prime Minister, Chris Minns, and the Police Commissioner in New South Wales taking this to try and block such rallies or vigils or protests, however it's described?
It is appropriate that the police seek the orders, the New South Wales police seek the orders that they're reported to have been seeking to prevent these protests occurring, not allowing them to occur lawfully. I would certainly call on the authorities to be prepared in the event that the protests go ahead without lawful permission, and we need to see a very clear direction from Prime Minister Albanese, who's been all over the map on this and driven much more by domestic political considerations than by standing up for what is right. This is a threat to public order in Australia, and it is also an affront to the values, I suggest, of many Australians. And we cannot have people bearing the symbols, waving the flags of listed terrorist organisations. That is against the law, and that's for very good reason. These listed terrorist organisations are a threat to public order and public safety, certainly in the Middle East, but also in Australia, and that's why we have those laws in place, and they need to be enforced.
Manager of Opposition Business, Paul Fletcher, appreciate your time. We'll see you next week when Parliament resumes.
Thank you, Kieran.